And it turns out there is a path you can take around two moving black holes that haven't quite collided yet, where you can end up in the past of when you started that journey. It's backwards time travel, according to calculations from Einstein's general relativity, is enabled by the severely distorted fabric of space and time, such as what you would get with black holes that came in their own proximity.
Hey, Joe, do you ever have any interactions with Tony Rumble?
So my mom took me to an independent show. It was a Century Wrestling Alliance, the CWA, 1997. It was at the Bristol Community College in Rhode Island. And that was the first time I ever met Tony Rumble. Got to get an autograph, still have the autograph to this day. Didn't get a picture with him, unfortunately, but great show. It was an awesome show. Maverick Wild was on there, Brutal Bob Evans, Tony Atlas, Kevin Sullivan, Public Enemy. It was a great show. Good memories. Fast forward a few years later, I get a phone call at home from Tony Rumble. And he's like, "Hey, is this Joe Bruin?" I'm like, "Yes." And we talked for about maybe 10 minutes. He said that my name came up in his locker room. And he said Rick Fuller had mentioned me and somebody else had mentioned me. And he had heard nothing but good things and heard that I do a wonderful job with ring announcing. And he's, basically the conversation, the way it went was, maybe in the near future, we can do something, not necessarily ring announcing, but maybe we could work together. Maybe something's going to happen down the line. Maybe we could, something will pan out. And I was all for it, obviously. And unfortunately, he passed away almost right after that phone conversation, not long after that. So that was unfortunate. But I went to the memorial dinner that they did for him which was real nice. A lot of great speeches, and everybody kind of had their memories about Tony. And, then I went to the Tony Rumble Memorial Show, which was run by the NWA New England. So I was happy to at least be a part of that weekend, but it was cool to at least have some interaction with Tony. He's got a great reputation. So.
Yeah, I've been going through and watching and actually posting the old ICWs when he was hosting them. I don't know if you've seen them on my page. I just started posting them.
I did see some of them. Yeah. Yep. That's classic stuff.
Oh, yeah, that stuff's great to see again. I always think, can you imagine if Tony stayed around, like what the New England scene would be like, how different it would be if, he didn't pass?
Oh my gosh. I mean, he was so influential. Who knows what he could have done? You know what I mean? Things would have been a lot different. That's for sure.
Right. That's how I think often. And I'm like, you don't know what it would be, but it would definitely be different. Like we probably would have had a nice little something big around him. Like maybe not huge, but something bigger than what it was.
Right.
No matter what you do in life, remember, just be bad. Woo!
Tony Rumble in the ring. Tony Rumble in the ring in the far corner. We're awaiting the arrival now of the Tonga Kid. Again. Whoever it is.
Weighing in at 299 pounds at home, a boxing bad boy.
Kid with perspiration glistening on his back, as you can tell. He's been loosening up and getting ready for this match. One fall, 10-minute time limit now, and it's the Tonga Kid ready to go against Tony Rummel. They tell me he weighs in at almost 300 pounds, and Rummel very quickly drives him back into the corner. Referee calls for the break. Good, clean break. Rummel steps back. The Tonga Kid squares off, flashes out. Puts in the midsection. Hard right hand again. Under the chin, brings Rummel up a full body slam. Down across the chest and the throat of Rummel is the Tonga Kid. The Tonga Kid drives another hard right hand. And so Rummel in a lot of trouble here, as the Tonga Kid has wasted no time whatsoever. Good chop right over the heart. And one to the top of the head that drives Rummel back to the canvas. Tonga Kid explodes with another. I'll tell you what, this Rummel is some kind of tough, though. He took the best the Tonga Kid had to offer. Stayed on his feet. That one buckled him up, however. And look at this. Almost 300 pounds of live weight now. That's not dead weight. That's live weight. Tonga Kid not allowing the pinfall on that one. Says, no, sir. I've got someone here that I want to make an object lesson of. And that's exactly what he's doing. Tonga Kid with a flying headbutt. Rummel is down, and the Tonga Kid moving up on that top ring rope. And wait a minute. Wait a minute. Sullivan, the master of the occult. Kevin Sullivan charging in there after the Tonga Kid. And Kevin Sullivan punishing the Tonga Kid, and there you see his lady in waiting, and Kevin Sullivan has exploded on the Tonga Kid, and we've got total bedlam here, and it is Kevin Sullivan now pushing anybody and everybody out of his way. Now it's Diamond out there, Diamond trying to put a stop to it. He's hurdled from the ring, and the Tonga Kid has got Sullivan's lady in waiting in trouble, catches her, and she's dropped to the table outside. And now it's Kevin Sullivan smashing the Tonga Kid, the referee, calling a halt to this match. And the Tonga Kid taking all of that punishment, and all that's done is made him mad. And Kevin Sullivan suddenly realizes He's raised a new kind of demon here. And Sullivan now beginning to beat a hasty retreat. But the Tonga Kid is after the Tonga Kid. Catches him with a right hand. And it's Kevin Sullivan and the Tonga Kid battling their way up into the grandstand here, into the bleacher area. And it's Kevin Sullivan and the Tonga Kid battling it out in the bleachers. It's the Tonga Kid now scoring with a right hand. Kevin Sullivan with a waist lock on him. And the two of them battling it out on the bleachers. And neither man able to gain any advantage here as they continue to battle it out amidst the crowd. And again, officials and referees trying to separate them, but this match has gotten completely out of hand. And the two of them battling it out on the bleachers. And neither man able to gain any advantage here as they continue to battle it out amidst the crowd. And again, officials and referees trying to separate them, but this match has gotten completely out of hand. Kevin Sullivan invading the ring, and now the enmity, the bad blood between the Tonga Kid and Kevin Sullivan really exploding. Diamond out there trying to separate it, as is the referee, but the battle continues to rage outside. And brother, keep those cameras grinding because we've got some red hot action going on outside the ring, and this battle continues all the way to the far wall. Kevin Sullivan smashed into that concrete wall. Sullivan smashed into the wall again. And the Tonga Kid now wreaking untold havoc on Kevin Sullivan. We're losing him in the crowd, but I'll tell you what, the action continues as it goes right on out of the building, out through the exit. And, brother, they got a beer sixer going out on the street. Kevin Sullivan and the Tonga Kid battling it out outside of the ring, through the bleachers, and out through the door, and it's, whew. All I can say is that Kevin Sullivan got a little bit more than he asked for that time. The Tonga Kid unloading everything he had. And this battle continues outside, and I'll guarantee you one thing. The war between these two is not over by a long shot.
So, Joe, I understand you were involved with a show with MTV.
Yeah, I was a part of a wrestling show. It was in Worcester, Massachusetts in 1998, I believe. And that was Bert Centeno. That was his show. And they had a wide variety of talent. I believe Astro Man was on that show. Dynamic Kid Louis Vega. Doink the Clown, who I believe was played by Phil Apollo. WWF enhancement talent. And Tony Atlas was on the card. I remember Rocky Raymond from Empire Pro Wrestling. He was the ring announcer. But MTV was there to film scenes from MTV True Life. What was it called? MTV True Life, I Want to Be a Pro Wrestler, or something like that. And it was a documentary, on MTV. And I can be seen in some of the footage, just kind of standing backstage with the talent. And that was a big deal for them. They had a great crowd on hand, and, having MTV a part of their show. Slick Wagner Brown was on there, managed by Bo Douglas. Mike Hollow was on the show. A lot of great talent on that particular card that night.
I actually own that. I have that on recorded somewhere.
Oh, you do?
Yeah, I'd have to find it. It's buried in my tape somewhere, but I have that somewhere.
Oh, wow.
I remember what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, they did a great job with that show. That was a lot of fun. One of the guests that I had. Oh, go ahead.
It was pretty surprising to do something like that on the indies. It was rare to do that.
Absolutely. I mean, that was high profile. You know what I mean? That was big. That was big time. One of the wrestlers that you would see in 1998, 1999 was Chief Dave Fox. I remember Chief Dave fondly. He was a real nice guy. I don't know if you remember him.
Yeah, he actually, last I remember of him was in Chaotic, the beginning of Chaotic. He was there.
Okay. Yeah, he was a good guy. He, unfortunately for UCW, he wrestled Iceberg, Sonny D. It was a championship match, and I think he had just won the title from Iceberg, and collapsed after the match. Unfortunately, had a heart attack and passed away. And Chief Dave was a good guy. Knew him for a couple years, early on in my career, and got to have him in studio for the Cox Cable Talk Show. So got to do an interview with him. I remember he taught my mom how to do some of the dances and stuff, which she always enjoyed, that memory. And yeah, Chief Dave went to his memorial dinner, his wake. That was a sad time for sure. I remember they had like a buffet at the memorial meal that followed the wake, and Chief Jules Strongbow was there to pay his respects, and sat directly across from me at the table. And I mean, he had some great stories about Chief Dave, and they were good friends. And for those who don't remember Chief Jules, he was the partner of Chief Jay Strongbow in the WWF. And he was a really good guy. I think at the time he lived in New Hampshire. Not sure if he's still a New Englander, but he is still around, so that is good.
Oh yeah, and then he wrestled around here for a while in New Jersey and Pennsylvania for that NWF and that area, and I believe the TWA when they started up.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't know if you remember all that with DC Drake and them.
I do. Yep. I never went to any of that stuff, but I do remember.
No, I never went either. I just have tapes of it.
Yeah. DC Don Drake.
Yeah,
Don Drake is a member of the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, he was inducted in, I want to say 2009, I believe, and couldn't make it, unfortunately, because he had some major health issues at that time. He was in the hospital with his heart, and couldn't make it to the ceremony, unfortunately.
Oh yeah, I think he's doing okay now. I've seen him on Facebook. I don't talk to him or anything, but I've seen he's on there.
Yeah, he's doing his first appearance in, I mean, probably a dozen years. He's doing Icons of Pro Wrestling, I believe, one of the wrestling conventions.
I understand you've worked with Killer Kowalski and have something to do with Killer Kowalski.
Yeah, Killer Kowalski, one of the greatest legends of all time, one of the most feared competitors in the ring, and a staple in New England wrestling. Of course, Killer Kowalski Institute of Pro Wrestling, Malden, Massachusetts. He's trained the likes of Perry Saturn and Triple H and Albert and China and just a whole host of others. But Kowalski, I had the privilege of interviewing in 1999. I think it was a 40-minute interview with him. So that was an absolute pleasure. I got to go to his school, sit down with him. That was the first time that I met him. We had spoke on the phone prior to that. But I've spoke on the phone multiple times with him. I used to receive Christmas cards from him. We would talk all the time. I was his ring announcer for a little while for Killer Kowalski All-Star Wrestling. I replaced Mel Simons. I don't know if he retired at that time or just wasn't working with Killer for a while, but I probably did a full year for Killer Kowalski, got to do different spot shows. It was really a great experience working for Killer. He was such a nice guy, a genuinely funny man. He would just dry sense of humor, always cracking jokes, stuff you wouldn't expect to come out of Killer Kowalski's mouth. Just really funny guy, real nice guy, hardcore vegetarian. And but I mean, how many people can say that they've had the opportunity to work with and work for Killer Kowalski? I mean, I'm blessed to have had that opportunity. So lots of good memories with Walter. And you brought up Mayhem earlier.
Yes.
I remember being in a meeting. Derek Destiny took me to see the Storm Brothers, Kyle and Matt. It was the first time I met them. They were with Mayhem at the time, and I guess they were in charge of the school on the training portion of Mayhem. And I remember I was given a contract to start training with Mayhem as a wrestler. You know, they were like, "Are you interested?" And I was like, "You know what? Maybe I do try this out." And took the contract home. Didn't end up doing it. Kind of, you know, in ring just wasn't for me. It was always ring announcing, you know. But that was actually right when I had just started to ring announce. That was early on, and you know, I gave it some thought, but it just wasn't for me. So came close to, you know, training in the Mayhem school. So that was interesting too.
Mayhem was pretty hardcore and violent too, wasn't it?
Yes, I think their hardcore champion was Black Wolf, I believe, for a while. He was like the face for a while. Might have even been, was he the owner of that promotion?
I'm not sure. I've only heard of Mayhem. I've seen one event of Mayhem, and I hear a lot about it. A lot of Primal came from Mayhem, and I know the Storm Brothers came from Mayhem. I know a lot came from Mayhem, and like I said, I've seen one event, and it was all grainy and lines running through it and everything. It was real bad quality, but I watched it. I tried to watch it.
I'm not too familiar with them. I just remember them being around at that time, and they had the hardcore reputation, but I had never been to one of their shows.
I watched it was a block party, and they put someone through a window, like a plain glass thing. Dave Donovan was there. I think Padula was there. The Storm Brothers were there. So it was people I knew, and I was like, oh, that's where these guys came from. You know, when I first found Primal, I had seen it.
Sure. I remember seeing Diamond Dave Donovan. He wrestled for UCW for a while. So I remember seeing him, and I want to say he wrestled Dave Padula. It was a hardcore match for UCW. Gino Martino was there, and he was doing all of his strongman competition, laying on the bed of spikes or nails or whatever. And, you know, but I remember Diamond Dave was at that show, and that was at the Attleboro Armory in Attleboro, Massachusetts, 1999.
Earlier, you mentioned the ECWA, and you mentioned it last time too. What do you got to say about the ECWA, and what involvement did you have with that?
My first experiences with ECWA, which was run by Jim Kettner, one of the nicest guys, one of the most knowledgeable guys in the wrestling business, but really just one of the nicest guys. I mean, you know, there could be a lot of cutthroat people out there, but Jim Kettner is one of the best to do it. And he was running shows. Obviously, he was, you know, ECWA was based out of Delaware, but he was running some spot shows in Connecticut and New London, Connecticut, maybe Groton, Connecticut. I don't remember now, but you know, my brother Tony actually asked if I wanted to go to a show. He lives in New London, Connecticut. So I went with my brother. So full circle, because obviously, you know, watched wrestling for the first time with my brother. So we go to the show. This was in January of 2000. And it was run by the ECWA. But the money guy for the show was, you know, the promoter was Kettner, but the money guy was Sam Romanella, who runs K&M All-Star Sports out of the Norwich Town Mall back then. Now he's in Foxwoods in their mall there. So I do remember that, and huge crowd. I mean, man, you could tell the difference when you went to the show, that it was like next level. You know what I mean? There was probably 1,500 or more in the crowd, and at that time, that was, you know, kind of unheard of. It was considered a massive crowd. D'Lo Brown versus Hardcore Holly was the main event. Hardcore Holly managed by BB Barbara Bush. You know, all three of them representing the WWF. All three of them were still full time with the WWF. So they had WWF kind of working, Kettner and WWF always had a relationship. So, you had all these fresh faces that you didn't see in New England, like Ty Street and Vincent Goodnight and the Backseat Boys and Mr. Ooh La La, and all these faces from the ECWA. Now you're seeing in New England for the first time, and people were excited. The place was packed, and like I said, you had the WWF tie-in. The MC for the night was Kevin Kelly, who was a full-time announcer with the WWF still at that time, so he was there, and it was just a special night. And that's where my relationship with Jim Kettner started. And I filmed the show, and I did backstage interviews. I got to interview D'Lo Brown and some of the other talent that was there. And it was just a week before the 2000 Royal Rumble at Madison Square Garden for WWF. So they were kind of gearing into that mode, and wrestling was still super hot at that time, still, dead center of the Attitude Era. And just a really cool experience. And then they did another show, like I said, I want to say it was Groton, Connecticut. It was another ECWA show, same thing. Kevin Kelly was the MC, Sam Romanella was the money guy, and they had the Dudley Boys on that show. They had Edge on that show, Tori from DX, a lot of current WWF stars again, as well as some of the best independent talent out there from all different areas. And then they had a third show that I went to where Sabu was a part of it. And then all that talent pretty much. Kept in contact with Jim, and he, I'd always give him a tape of what I did, and he always enjoyed it and said I did a good job. So he invited me to the Super 8 tournaments, which in wrestling, nothing was bigger than the Super 8 tournament. If you were a part of the Super 8, if you were one of the 8 individuals, you had made it. Whether you win it or not, just being a part of that was crazy. People would come from all over, even outside the country, to attend the Super 8 tournaments. So Jim invited me. It was in Wilmington, Delaware, at St. Matthew's Parish Center. And I went with my buddy Mike. Just made the trip. It was 2001. That was my first one for him. And, you had Mike Sullivan, who did some preliminary work with WCW. He was in there. You had that year Brian Kendrick, who was still known as Spanky. He was fresh out of Shawn Michaels' TWA or whatever that was, his wrestling school there. American Dragon, Brian Danielson, was one of the 8 members. I want to say Low Key was also in there. A lot of great talents. And the Haas brothers wrestled that night. Charlie Haas and the late Russ Haas, and all kinds of talents that night. But to be a part of the Super 8 was just unbelievable. I ended up interviewing 4 of the 8, participants. So that was big for me. It was a big deal for me. And I got treated like royalty when I got there. I mean, I remember Jim Kettner had Boogie Woogie Brown, who was a wrestler for ECWA. He was also behind the scenes, like kind of his one of his right-hand men for the ECWA. Boogie Woogie's there, and Jim's like, Boogie, get Joe some vouchers. And he's like handing me vouchers left and right for like, free drink vouchers, free food vouchers, free, and they were just treating me like royalty, like giving me all this stuff. Anything you need, Joe, anything you need. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you filming it. And I just felt welcomed. That was a big deal, to be a part of that. And a big deal for me to get those 4 interviews. I didn't get all 8 of them, but I got 4 of them. So I could, show them back on my talk show and get people talking. And, oh, wow, he went to the Super 8 tournament, and ended up being invited back the following year, went to 2002 Super 8, and got to interview all 8 participants that year backstage. Donovan Morgan and Bobby Roode, who of course went on to TNA and WWE fame. Jamie Noble, Matt Stryker, AJ Styles. So the Amazing Red, there were a lot of great talents at that show as well. That show was even better. I mean, it was just from top to bottom, a fantastic show. So It was cool. ECWA, you know, unfortunately, Kettner stepped down. He retired from the business, but he had been doing it for a long time. And in my personal opinion, the ECWA was never the same. You could feel it was kind of missing something. And certainly the Super 8 is not what it used to be. You know, still a great platform, still a great opportunity. Don't get me wrong. But back then, the Super 8 was like the place to be. It was a huge deal. So I'm glad that I was able to be there at that time when it was still, you know, at its peak pretty much, and on top. And very cool experience. And I'll always be grateful to Jim Kettner for allowing me to just be a very small part, you know, of those weekends.
Yeah, I think Slick Wagner Brown went against Xavier in that second one.
Yes, he was in. Yes. Yep. Yeah, that wasn't part. Well, wait a minute. John Xavier was in the actual Super 8.
I think Wagner Brown was too, I believe.
Not that year, no. No, because I interviewed the 8 participants. AJ Styles, Amazing Red, John Xavier, Donovan Morgan, Matt Stryker, Bobby Roode, Jamie Noble. Yeah, I don't remember Slick Wagner. I remember Slick Wagner being there in action, but not as part of that Super 8 tournament.
That could be off. All right. I think he was on one of them shows anyway that I just watched. Maybe it was like the show before the 8 Super 8 or something.
Yeah, it's possible. Slick Wagner, another underrated talent. Like, I'm surprised he didn't, you know, he should have got a bigger shot than he did, because for New England standards, like, he was definitely one of the best to come out of New England. And he was able to make a name for himself outside of New England. You know, he did do a lot. He's a member of the New England Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame. He was inducted in 2015 at the Convention Center in Providence. But he's, you know, definitely underrated. He's a great athlete.
It always seemed like he was right there on the cusp. Like, oh, he's going to make it. He always seemed like he was right there, tip, you know, right on the heels.
And that's the thing. There's only so many spots, I guess. I mean, you could be really good and just never get that break, you know? So it's all about being in the right place at the right time. You know, that's just how it is.
Yeah, and what they're looking for at that exact time.
Exactly. I mean, for a while there, you had to be huge, you know, and then they want the small guys. Oh, they want the big guys again. You know, you just got to be there at that moment.
On one of my interviews I had sent in for my documentary, a kid mentions his first independent show was one of your shows. And he believes the main event was Vert versus Jose. And Jose did a leg drop off the top rope and he knocked Vert silly. He thought, like, kind of knocked him on. He talked to him after, and Vert was kind of out of it.
Yeah.
Was that?
Yeah, that was Massachusetts Massacre.
Okay.
Which was March of 2000.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we were running through them, I was trying to figure out which show that was.
Yeah, that was. I remember that he got knocked out just briefly. Yeah.
Yeah, he was okay, but he just said that was his first. He loved it. He was addicted to independent wrestling after that. He's like in my documentary talking about what an independent fan he is now. He's the biggest Primal fan there ever was, and couldn't get enough of it. He went to every show with Brett after that, and they became like best friends and everything else. So,
is that Mac Pryor?
No, this is Joe Borges.
Okay, all right.
If you watch that,
that's the thing about Primal, they had a lot of diehard fans.
Right, that's a lot why I'm doing the documentary, because they had such a following.
They did, yeah. They definitely did.
If you watch that hype video I did with the thing that swings down and changes, he's the guy that starts it and ends it in the red shirt.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's why I started with him. He says, I'm Primal's #1 fan or something. That's why I started the video.
Very very cool. And then I was also there again for PCW, Primal Conflict Wrestling. Some good memories for that show as well. Did a bunch of interviews backstage that night with Ali Muhammad and Gino Martino, the Millennium Killers. Interviewed Sandy Starr that night. East Coast Intensity, Jose Perez, Kevin Charisma, Studley Steve Stallion. Even got to do an interview with King Kong backstage, which was certainly a highlight at that point for me. And there was Riot, August of 2000. That was also at the Legion in Seekonk. That was, I believe, if I remember correctly, that was Kyle Storm and Rush. I don't know if you remember Rush.
No, just the popular guy.
Yeah, he was an older guy trained by Killer Kowalski. He teamed up with Tony Roy towards the end of his career. They were a tag team. Can't remember their names, but man, Rush and Kyle just didn't mesh. It was a slow moving. I remember Kyle after the match. He's like, "Man, that was possibly the worst match I ever had." That was a rough one. But other than that match, there was a great card. I remember Gino Martino was involved in a tag match to open up the show. It was like Gino and Widowmaker, I believe, against Donnie Rotten and look, I don't even remember the matches on my own show. It's been so long. But some type of mix with them, and they had a great match. Bob Evans was on the show. It was Bob Evans and Rick Fuller against the Power Company twins. That was a great match. Dan Hawk won the interstate title on that show. Dan Hawk was somebody that you saw for like New England Championship Wrestling and some other promotions in the Massachusetts area, New Hampshire area. We had Slick Wagner Brown, Kid USA, Jay Gillette, Latin Fury, Luis Ortiz. A lot of new faces. So it was a good show. It was definitely, I remember being disappointed. It was kind of a smaller crowd and it was a stronger card than some of my shows prior. So I was a little disappointed about that, but some great talents, and some of those matches are on the YouTube page for people to check out. So.
Oh, I didn't realize some of them guys wrestled in HWF. Yeah, I wish I had known about this interview sooner. I would have like looked some of that stuff up and I would have had it ready like I have this stuff ready. Stuff I was at, I have ready in front of me. The stuff before me, I'm kind of lost on a little bit because this was the last minute thing we're doing here, which I really appreciate you doing for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I know what a busy guy you are.
And Jose. That was one of the big, it was a hardcore match, I believe. At Battle Clash, maybe, was Jose and Suicidal Silva. It was either Battle Clash or Wrestle Riot. And then the other one was Jamie Payne versus Jose in a hardcore match. So we always try to keep at least one hardcore match per show. But I did end up changing the name of the organization from Hardcore Wrestling Federation to Heatwave Wrestling Federation to be more family friendly as far as in the title, in the advertising, stuff like that, but we would still have a hardcore match here and there.
When exactly did that happen? Between what shows?
So that would have been show number 3. So I believe Wrestle Riot, which was August of 2000, that was the first one. That was the Heatwave Wrestling Federation.
Okay.
So by the time you came around, it was already Heatwave.
It was the second Heatwave show my first show.
Yeah. Yeah, it was Hardcore Wrestling Federation only for the first 2 events. Thanksgiving Meltdown 2000, we had a tag team gauntlet match. I remember Nick Steele was involved in that. That was the only time that Nick Steele had worked for the HWF, so it was nice to be able to work with him. I remember Spike Dudley was in the crowd watching the show.
Where's my camera frozen?
The crowd was very into it. I remember that. There was another promotion. the NAWF. I don't know if you remember them, New Age Wrestling Federation. They would run out of Fitchburg, Worcester, Leicester. It was run by Kid USA, Jay Gillette. That was another good promotion, for the indies. And he kind of did spot shows. He would just do them here and there, and I always enjoyed them. He'd always have great talent on the shows. Luis Ortiz, Don Vega, Bert Centeno. He himself would, wrestle on the show. Rick Fuller. Always a good cluster of talent. GQ Smooth, Astro Man. So I would always enjoy doing his shows. I was always the ring announcer for them as well. But that's the thing. I was ring announcing for IIW whenever Rich wasn't. I was always ring announcing full time for UCW, ring announcing full time for the other UCW, ring announcing for APCW back in 2002, 2003. And then obviously they turned into New Generation Wrestling. I was still ring announcing for them. I was ring announcing for NWW Extreme, Jimmy Allen. So he was running at that time. I was ring announcing for him. Ring announcing for Kid USA with the NAWF. I ring announced one show for NCW at the Legion in Seekonk when their ring announcer couldn't make it. Ring announced for the NWA New England. The cool thing about that, I only ring announced for them once, but it was at my former junior high. So to ring announce in the gymnasium of the junior high that I'd have gym class in every week was just crazy. You know what I mean? And that was pretty cool to be a part of that. Also ring announced for Chaotic Wrestling for one show. So it must have been a show that Rich Palladino, for whatever reason, couldn't make it. And my mom took me to that show because I was still young at that point. This was probably 2000. And it was way out there in Massachusetts, like Ware, Mass, or Methuen. I mean, it was somewhere way out there from where we lived, in Providence, East Providence, Rhode Island. And my mom took me, we got lost. And back then, there was no GPS or anything like that. So you just had to ask for directions. And, even MapQuest was kind of new at that point. So it was rough. I was so embarrassed because, I was the fill-in for Chaotic that night and I was late to the show. And I was never late to the show. I would get to every show literally 3 hours early, hanging out, chatting with everybody, making sure I'm all set. And for me to be late to a show, this is the one time that I was late to a show. And it was very important because I was the ring announcer. So they had somebody else ring announce the first match or two, just some random person that was there. They had him fill in. And I came in and Jamie and Randy Miller were co-owners of Chaotic at that time. And Randy was not happy. He was not, and I don't blame him. And he still let me ring announce the rest of the show, which was cool. And took over the next match and finished out the show. There was still probably 6 matches or so, But man, that was the only time I was late, and what a bad feeling that was. That was rough.
That was probably Methuen. I know they used to run Methuen. I've been to a show or two up there.
Okay. Yeah, it was probably Methuen. That sounds about right. Another one was Powerhouse Wrestling, PHW, which was run by Chris Sataro. I ring announced for them kind of regularly, semi-regularly for a while, but they were just a mess. They really were. They would announce all these, come to our next show. We're going to have Roddy Piper, Lex Luger, Mr. Perfect, you name it. And they're naming all these stars, and none of those people are going to be at the next show, And that's how they would promote it. They'd put these guys on the poster that were never going to appear. Now, don't get me wrong. They did bring in stars, but half the time it wasn't the stars that they were advertising. And there was one time where I was booked to ring announce. Chris Ataro called me up. He said, I need you as a ring announcer for this show. I said, all right, I'll be there. He also booked 2 other ring announcers. and he's just a maniac. Like, he doesn't even know what he's doing. So I show up, this other guy shows up who I've never heard of, and Rich Palladino shows up. So all three of us are slated to ring announce the show, and he's all confused. He's like, well, I don't know what we're going to do here. So he had each of us kind of ring announce different matches. And it was just kind of bizarre. It was a strange promotion. Some cool guys, you know, they bring in some interesting talent, but ring announce Buff Bagwell there, and got to do a bunch of backstage interviews there with Bagwell and Brutus and Captain Lou Albano, which was definitely a highlight. Greg the Hammer Valentine, Gangrel, Tony Atlas, the Public Enemy. You know, they always had good talent, a lot of good indie talent as well. I just wish they knew what they were doing behind the scenes, because it was always a cluster.
Special guest ring announcer every other match.
Yeah, it was bizarre. And then for a while there, he brought me in as the booker for Powerhouse. And I started to book the talent. I would make the phone calls. He would have me, all right, we're going to run with this angle, this guy and this guy. So I need you to call them, book them for this. So I would call, book those talents for that spot. And then he would change his mind. Oh, you know, we're not going to do that. We're going to do this instead. And it's like, well, these guys are already booked now. Tell them we don't need them. It's like, that's not how it works, you know, especially when you're working with higher profile talent. So immediately I got out of the booking situation. That I could see the writing on the wall that he was just, you know, not one you wanted to really get involved with. And shortly after that, I was done with Powerhouse Wrestling. But trying to think who else. 3P Pro, which was Jose Perez.
Yep.
He did that Bell Rica show. Might have done a couple other shows, but I ring announced the Bell Rica show. A lot of great local talent on that show. Fandango was there, you know, before he made it, and Chris Nowinski and Balls Mahoney, and obviously they had some hardcore. I think they had a Santa Claus that day with barbed wire or something.
Evil Ed special.
Yeah. So I stayed busy. I mean, I ring announced everywhere, every weekend. You know, I was always in a different promotion. IIW, Johnson and Wales University, from, I believe, the year 2000. I remember I was a commentator. It was me and Iceberg Sunny D as the commentators that night. And they had a 20-man battle royal. They had Short Sleeve Samson versus Tiny the Terrible. They had Tiger Fang versus Dan Badandi, I believe. And then they had John Cronus versus Gino Martino in a hardcore match. And they said, the school said, do not get any blood anywhere. There can't be any blood at all. Don't touch the tables. Don't touch the chairs. You know, don't break anything. Whatever you're going to do it in the ring, and that's it. And immediately, just a couple minutes into the match, they bring it out into the crowd. They start juicing. There's blood all over the floor of the school here at Johnson and Wales. And they're throwing each other into the tables, throwing each other into the chairs. Chairs are breaking. There's blood all over the place. Immediately after the match, the show is canceled during intermission. And there was a full roster in the back waiting to go for the second half. Tony Atlas and just a slew of talent. And the show was done immediately. Everybody was pissed. They were pissed. And it's too bad because it was a hot crowd. It was a sizable crowd. And they could have had a great show overall. But, you know, that was the era of hardcore and the crowd was going nuts during that match. So you can't, what can you do? That's just how it was, you know. But I'm sure the promoters
that last.
Exactly, put it on last, right?
Don't do it, or if you're gonna put that on last, so when they kick you out, at least everybody else gets on, you know.
Right, exactly. Then I got a phone call one day from Mike Sparta. I don't know if you know him.
I don't know him, but I know MWF. That's I know he's involved with that.
Oh no, Mike. Dan Marotti is MWF.
Oh yeah, Mike Sparta is
He was WWA.
yes.
Yeah, and he called me. Everybody's got a Mike Sparta story. So
I've
he
heard the
called
name
me.
a lot.
He's like, Joe Bruin, is this Joe Bruin? And I'm like, yes, it is. And he's like, it's just Mike Sparta. He's like, I was told you're a good ring announcer. You're one of the better ring announcers around here. You're actually, I've been told, the best ring announcer around here. Well, okay, well, thank you. I don't know who this guy is at this point. I had never met Mike Sparta. So somebody recommended me. I ended up getting booked full time. I was the WWA full-time ring announcer, replacing Mel Simons, who was basically, I guess, stepping down from his ring announcing duties there. But I must say, a lot of people have negative stories about Mike Sparta. He's a wild man, a crazy man. But man, I had the most fun working for the WWA. It was very professional from everything that I saw. The talent was a deep roster from all over. He would bring them in from everywhere. Tri-state area, loaded with star power, just a great, they'd have guys you don't see all the time, Jeff Starr and Ruse Starr, Julio De Niro. Man, there was just so much talent there. Rick Fuller sometimes, Rick Steiner. There was this one time where he had Rikishi on the poster, and the fans would be devastated if Rikishi's not going to be there because he's the headliner of the show. Well, Rikishi's not going to be there. So Mike Sparta says, Tonga Kid is here, who was also, scheduled to appear. So we're going to make him Rikishi. You're going to announce him as Rikishi. And I said, well, I can't announce him as Rikishi. He's not Rikishi. Oh, no. Don't worry. The fans won't even know. We're going to call him Rikishi. Let's walk over right now. So he walks me over to Tonga Kid and runs the idea by him. And Tonga says, I'm not going to be called Rikishi. You could call me Kishi. And so he in the end, I have to ring announce the Tonga Kid as Kishi. And he came out to Rikishi's theme song. We're trying to make the crowd believe that Rikishi is there. And half the crowd thought it was Rikishi. Half the crowd knew it wasn't Rikishi. That was interesting. That was an interesting night.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
And he's a big enough star where you could, hey, he didn't make it, but what's he, his cousin? His cousin made it instead, the Tonga Kid.
Yeah, they're related. I mean, yeah, Tonga Kid. I mean, that's fine. It's still
and he was the Samoan Savage. And what was he after that? He was something after that too, right?
one half of the Islanders.
Yeah.
But
I mean, if you're going to have a substitute, he's the one to have.
Right, exactly. But it was a fun memory. It was definitely interesting. But yeah, working for Sparta was, you always got paid. You always got paid well. Or I did anyway. Dr. Tom Pritchard was the talent scout in the crowd at all the shows.
Wow.
He was with the WWF at the time, obviously, and he was scouting out the events and took a liking to me as a ring announcer, which was huge. I remember getting the feedback from Bert Centeno. Bert's telling me, hey, Dr. Tom is really high on you as a ring announcer, and WWF is currently looking for a ring announcer. And I was like, wow, you got to be kidding. So Mike Sparta comes up to me and he's like, Joe, don't change anything. Keep your hair the exact way it is. I don't want you to change a thing. Dr. Tom likes you. We're going to keep you, and we're going to keep you the exact way you are. Your appearance as you are here. Don't change a thing. So I'm like, okay. So I continue to ring announce the shows. Eventually, Bert Centeno said that I was going to get a tryout with the WWF, I guess through Dr. Tom. And Dr. Tom was let go by the WWF shortly after that. And there went my opportunity to ring announce for the WWF. And almost immediately after that, Jason or Justin Roberts was hired as a full-time WWF ring announcer, and he lasted 10 years there. Now he's the AEW ring announcer. So that spot was actually the spot that I was going to try out for. So kind of weird how things turn out, you know?
Wow. Yeah. That's right there, huh?
Yeah, I was so close.
That's how there's a lot of stories like that where it's like passing in the night, you know what I mean? Skin of your teeth.
Right. Exactly.
That's the wrestling business. You know, you either hit it or you just miss it.
Right. Right.